You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Cloud. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or say goodbye to alcohol for good, this podcast will help you stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Listen on to find out how. Hi, friends. Welcome back. Today, I want to take a step back and talk about why we drink. In Western culture, at least, alcohol is such a big part of our everyday life, and drinking is so normal that we rarely stop to wonder why we drink in the first place. But it's an important question to ask because the better we can understand our drinking habits, the easier it is to change them. First of all, we drink because people around us drink. It's really as simple as that. We grow up watching the adults around us drink, whether it's our parents or extended family or our neighbors. And we learn that alcohol accompanies different kinds of scenarios and emotions. We might watch people drink when they're celebrating a special occasion, like a birthday or an anniversary, when they're tired or in pain, when they've just gotten bad news, or when they just get together with friends. And many of us have watched our parents have a drink or two with dinner most nights without any special occasion whatsoever. That was actually the case in my family. First of all, I should say my family make their own wine, and my mom and dad still do that to this day. It's very normal in parts of Bulgaria, which is where I'm from, for families to have their own little vineyards and to make homemade wine for personal consumption. So when I was growing up, there was wine on the table most nights. It was just so normal. You sit down for dinner and there's a little pitcher with wine that the adults drink. I don't remember anyone getting drunk really, but still, the message I got was that wine is just a normal part of everyday life, no big deal. And then on special occasions, the hard liquor would come out, the whiskey or gin or rakia, which is the Bulgarian national drink. It's a type of fruit brandy. And that was my alcohol education when I was growing up. And when that's what we see modeled around us, we see that that's the social norm. And through repeated exposure, we buy into the premise that that's the done thing. Even if no one tells us explicitly, hey, when you're an adult, you're going to start drinking, that's what we learn anyway. That's the expectation that we'll follow this path too, and it's only a matter of time. And that expectation that we too will become drinkers at some point becomes part of our unconscious programming. It's how we're socialized to think about alcohol. And of course, that's not everyone's experience. Some people grow up in communities where there isn't very much drinking for religious or for other reasons. And some kids may have had an alcoholic parent or other relative, and that experience may have turned them off alcohol. But even so, for most people, they're used to being in the presence of alcohol, and they don't even question it if they see someone drinking. It doesn't register as strange to see alcohol served and consumed. And in fact, drinking is so common that the opposite is actually true. People question you if you choose not to drink, and it's odd if there's no alcohol present at a social gathering. This socialization, that drinking is normal when everyone does it, becomes a huge obstacle for people who are trying to cut back on drinking or to quit. They worry that they'll no longer fit in with their friends if they stop drinking, and they worry that they won't belong, and they might even be shunned or become social pariahs. This is a primal fear that goes deeper than rational thinking. Humans are social creatures. We have evolved to live in groups with other humans, and it wasn't that long ago that being accepted as part of the group was literally a prerequisite for survival. If someone was kicked out of the group, they would actually die. Nowadays, this isn't quite the case. Even if you're excluded from one particular social group, it's unlikely that you will end up in such extreme isolation that your very existence would be threatened. But this desire to be accepted and fit in is still a very powerful drive. Even though we want to stand out and we all believe that we're unique, special snowflakes, on some level, we actually want to be just like everyone else because that's safer. That's the impulse that's encoded into our DNA to fit in with the group. That means that if you choose to do something that sets you apart from the group, like quit drinking, even though all of your friends are drinkers, you have to do some mindset work to convince yourself that it's okay to be different in this one respect. You have to persuade your nervous system that it's safe to swim against the current on this particular habit. And that mindset shift can be an uphill battle for some people. So that's the first reason we drink, because we're taught to drink. The second big reason? Marketing. Big alcohol wants us to drink. Alcohol is a huge industry. Globally, the market for alcoholic beverages was estimated to be $1.63 trillion in 2023, and it's expected to continue growing by about 5% every year to reach $2.25 trillion by 2033. That's why we are inundated with ads that tell us drinking is a status symbol. It's sophisticated to be a wine connoisseur. It's fun to have a few beers with friends while watching the game on Sunday. It's classy to have a neat scotch by the fire. It's sexy to sip a martini in a slinky dress in a dark bar. Alcohol companies want us to keep drinking, and they spend billions of dollars to convince us to drink. And I mean literally billions of dollars. Billions of dollars are spent every year to sell us the vision of alcohol as the cornerstone of a good life. Holiday on the beach? Drink. Romantic dinner with your significant other? Drink. Family reunion? Drink. Backyard barbecue with the neighbors? Playdate? Baby shower? Camping trip? You guessed it. Drink. And I'm sure we can all name a few ads for alcohol that we've seen so many times that they've been imprinted onto our brains. I'm thinking right now of the Absolute Vodka ads from, I guess, the 80s and the 90s. But of course, there are so many others. So many alcohol companies that have become household names because we've seen them on TV and on billboards and in magazines again and again. This narrative of alcohol being an indispensable part of life has permeated other media as well. There's hardly a movie or a sitcom episode where at least one alcoholic drink doesn't make an appearance. And go into any stationery store trying to buy a birthday card, and you'll see any number of cutesy cards that have something or other to do with drinking. If you're typing a text that includes the word celebration or congratulations, the suggested emoji that pops up on your phone will be the champagne bottle and champagne flutes. That's how deep those associations are. That's the alcohol industry's dream come true. Free marketing. We're now doing their marketing for them because we keep spreading the message that drinking is normal and fun and everyone does it. Okay, the third reason we drink is because alcohol works. And what I mean by that is that it feels good in the first 15-20 minutes. If it didn't feel good, we wouldn't keep drinking it. Alcohol works on two levels. For one, it interferes with the neurotransmitters in your brain, which are the little chemical messengers in your brain. They carry information from one part of the brain to another. And when you drink, the communication system in your brain slows down, and this has the effect of mild sedation. You have that feeling of everything slowing down and moving a bit farther away from you. So things that felt super urgent a few minutes ago before you started drinking suddenly feel slightly more in the distance once you have had a few sips of alcohol. And when we consume alcohol, there is also a huge release of dopamine in the brain. Dopamine is the pleasure hormone, which creates a feeling of happiness or even euphoria. Alcohol also increases the production of serotonin, which is another feel-good hormone that makes you feel calm. The brain releases dopamine as a reward when we've done something that is good for our survival, like eating or having sex. This temporary rush of pleasure that we experience teaches us that what we've just done is good and we should do more of it. It ensures that we're motivated to continue engaging in the good behaviors, that is, behaviors that are good for survival. What happens when we drink alcohol is that the brain releases artificially high levels of dopamine. And this unnaturally high level of pleasure tells the brain that alcohol is really good for our survival, more so than a lemonade or a cup of tea. The brain learns that alcohol is important, and every time we drink alcohol, we reinforce this lesson. So over time, the brain will learn to think that alcohol is necessary for survival. Of course, that's not actually true, but the high levels of dopamine released when we drink alcohol trick the primitive part of our brains into believing that we actually need the substance in order to live. And every time you drink, you reinforce the message that alcohol is good, and so the brain keeps asking for it. So that was reason number 3 for why we drink, because alcohol makes us feel good, at least at first. And finally, we drink because we're creatures of habit. And when we do something repeatedly, over time that behavior becomes automated. If we do something enough times, the brain learns how to automate that process so that it can perform that task without too much effort. And our brains love that because it saves energy. Think about driving a car. When you're first learning, you have to consciously think about what you're doing in every single moment. But over time, as you drive more and that process becomes more familiar, your brain automates the behavior, which means you don't have to remind yourself to switch gears or to signal before you turn. You start to do that automatically. Or think about tying your shoelaces. You don't have to think about each individual movement or remind yourself to tighten the knot. Your hands do that automatically, even while you're thinking about what you need to get from the grocery store. That's because you've done this movement so many times. And that's what it means to do something on autopilot. You're doing it without consciously thinking about it. You're just using muscle memory. Your body is going through the motions while your mind is somewhere else. And this is what happens with drinking too. When you drink repeatedly, and especially if your drinking follows the same patterns, it becomes a habit, which means that with enough repetition, at some point the drinking becomes automatic. You don't have to remind yourself to pour a glass of wine when you start making dinner. You do it without even thinking about it. So there you have it, the reasons why you drink. Because people around you drink, because alcohol companies spend a lot on marketing and advertising, because alcohol feels good in the moment, and because your brain is a really good student and it loves to automate repeated behaviors. But what about overdrinking, you might be wondering? I've covered why we drink anything at all, but that doesn't explain why some people can easily take it or leave it, while other people become more dependent on it and have a hard time saying no. Now, I want you to hear me when I say this. There is nothing wrong with you if you sometimes drink more than you want to or more than you plan to. You're not broken. You don't have a disease. It's not lack of willpower or a moral failing to find yourself struggling to say no to a drink or to stop once you've started. There are a variety of factors that influence our individual relationships with alcohol. Some of them are genetic and some are environmental. Kids growing up in families where there is alcohol use disorder are more likely to develop alcohol use disorder themselves. And adverse childhood experiences and trauma also can increase the risk of developing addictive behaviors later on in life. Adverse childhood experiences might include things like emotional neglect, inconsistent parenting, abuse of any kind, or other difficult dynamics that affect how safe and supported we feel growing up. And encountering trauma later in life can also change the trajectory of someone's drinking. And as we've discussed, socialization is also a big part of that as well. The takeaway here is that there are a lot of different factors at play, and there's no way to predict for certain what kind of a drinker someone will turn out to be. We know this because siblings who grow up in the same family can have very different relationships with alcohol. And we also see that people from all kinds of socioeconomic backgrounds and very different family dynamics and very different character traits can end up developing drinking habits that they're not happy with. At the time I'm recording this, Science still hasn't come up with a formula to calculate what determines how much you'll end up drinking. There's no way to accurately say why you might have developed a dependence on alcohol when you're having a hard time cutting back, while your sibling or your friends seem just to not care so much and they can take it or leave it. But again, this is the bottom line I want to leave you with. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not weak. You've just taught your brain to rely on alcohol in certain situations. That's it. And all of that is reversible. You can absolutely break those patterns and teach your brain something new. Even if you've been drinking for a long time, even if you drink every day, even if you drink a lot more now than you used to drink. No matter what your drinking looks like today, I promise you the change is possible for you. So if you find yourself thinking, there's something wrong with me because I can't drink like other people, I want you to start reframing that right now. Instead of telling yourself that there's something different about you, start paying attention to your drinking patterns. Ask yourself, what has my brain learned about alcohol? And what do I want to teach it instead? The answer to those questions is where change begins. And that's exactly the kind of work I do with my coaching clients. Getting curious, rewriting old patterns, and building new habits. If you want to find out more about working with me, just head over to my website. The link is in the show notes. Thanks for listening today, and I'll talk to you next time. If you're looking for practical advice for how to say no to alcohol and say yes to yourself, you will want to get on my email list. Sign up to receive my free guide with 7 steps to kickstart your sobriety. The link is in the show notes, so go and grab it now, and I'll see you soon in your inbox.